Alina Rice watched her diplomatic shuttle depart the conclave station, the massive structure gradually shrinking against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. The taste of copper lingered in her mouth, her own blood from the ceremonial signing. A barbaric custom, deliberately chosen by the Silex to remind humanity of its new place in the galactic hierarchy. Drink. Colonel Vega offered her a flask of something that smelled like jet fuel. The military attaché had barely spoken since the final session. Not yet. Alina's gaze remained fixed on the view screen. I need to think clearly. Around her, the small delegation of Earth's representatives had segregated themselves into clusters of quiet despair. The military officers drank in silence. The economic advisors pored over projections of the crippling trade restrictions that would follow. The xenobiologists debated which species had been the most condescending. None of them saw what she saw. Alina pulled out her secure tablet and began making notes. During 3 excruciating days of negotiations, she had observed 17 alien species interact in their natural environment. Not as careful diplomatic delegations, but as victors who no longer felt the need to hide their true natures. The Velnar trade minister, Thrazix, had made no fewer than 14 mathematical errors while calculating potential tariff structures. The Juraxian delegation had spent hours debating the philosophical implications of a simple supply chain optimization that any first-year economics student could have resolved in minutes. The Zelaxians, despite their fearsome battle fleets, operated on economic principles that had been obsolete on Earth for centuries. Ambassador, Captain Sorensen interrupted her thoughts, voice thick with whiskey and defeat. What happens when we return? The public expected victory, not this humiliation. Alina looked up from her notes. We prepare. For what? Rebellion. They'll obliterate Earth if we violate the treaty. For adaptation. She turned her tablet to show him a series of calculations. Do you know what these represent? The captain squinted. Resource allocations. Inefficiencies. The Velnar control 17 key trade routes in the Proxima sector alone, yet they operate at roughly 40% of optimal capacity. Their economic model is built on monopolistic control rather than efficiency. With respect, Ambassador, what good does that knowledge do us now? We've been neutered as a species. Alina smiled for the first time since the signing ceremony. They've banned our warriors, Captain. Our ships, our weapons, our military strategies, all forbidden beyond Sol. But they've made a critical error. What's that? They never considered that combat isn't the only form of warfare. They've spent millennia fighting over territories and resources, but they've never experienced true economic competition. She resumed typing, her fingers moving with increasing speed. They think they've confined us to our solar system, but they've merely forced us to develop different weapons. If we can't deploy battleships, we'll deploy financial instruments. If we can't send soldiers, we'll send traders. If we can't conquer their worlds, we'll make them economically dependent on ours. Colonel Vega leaned forward. You're serious. Deadly serious. We need a new kind of army now. Alina's eyes gleamed with purpose as Earth grew larger in the view screen. Find me our best economists, game theorists, market strategists, and behavioral psychologists. And find me Admiral Chen. Chen. He's being forcibly retired under the treaty terms. Exactly. He'll be looking for a new war to fight. Alina saved her notes and encrypted the file. And I'm about to give him one. Admiral Kaido Chen, former admiral. He corrected himself bitterly, stood in the center of what appeared to be a war room unlike any he'd encountered in his 30 years of military service. Gone were the holographic fleet positions and weapons statistics. Instead, the walls displayed cascading market data, trade route visualizations, and behavioral prediction models that reminded him of tactical combat simulations, yet operated on entirely different principles. You still look skeptical, Admiral, Alina Rice said, now carrying herself with the assurance of someone who had spent 5 years executing a carefully crafted plan rather than the defeated diplomat who had returned from Alteris. It's just Chen now, he replied, running his finger along a console displaying complex financial algorithms. And yes, I'm skeptical. You're asking me to trade a battleship for a balance sheet. A slender woman with calculating eyes stepped forward. May I? She asked Rice, who nodded. Dr. Lakshmi Patel. She introduced herself. Former hedge fund manager. I once crashed the European carbon markets with 3 well-timed trades and a rumor about regulatory changes. Chen raised an eyebrow. And that makes you qualified to fight aliens. What exactly do you think war is, Mr. Chen? Patil gestured toward a holographic display of interstellar trade routes, resources deployed strategically to weaken an adversary's position while strengthening your own. The only difference is the weapons. Chen was unconvinced. The Velner have been systematically stripping Earth of technological patents while tripling the costs of essential off-world resources, and you think market manipulation will stop them? They've got battle cruisers. We've got spreadsheets. Show him, Rice said quietly. A young analyst activated the central display, revealing a complex 3-dimensional map of the Velmar economic empire. Highlighted in red were critical resource dependencies, supply chain vulnerabilities, and over-leveraged trading positions. The Velner control 17 key trade routes, but operate at only 40% efficiency, Rice explained, echoing observations she'd made 5 years earlier. Their economic model prioritizes control over optimization. They've never faced true competition because they've always used military force to secure monopolies. And we're going to compete with them. Chen asked incredulously. With what assets? Earth's economy is barely recovering from the post-treaty recession. In response, Rice activated a secondary display showing a network of shell corporations, seemingly unrelated investment portfolios, and resource stockpiles strategically positioned throughout human-accessible space. For 5 years, we've been building this network, she said. Small investments, quiet acquisitions, patents filed under obscure subsidiaries. Nothing that would attract attention. We've been particularly focused on the hypersector minerals that the Velmar economic empire depends upon. Chen studied the display with growing interest, his military mind recognizing something he hadn't seen in years, a viable battle plan. You need someone who understands strategic deployment, he realized aloud. Someone who can think like a warrior but fight on an economic battlefield. Exactly. Rice played a recording on the main screen. Chen's famous tactical innovation during the Proxima defense, where he'd used civilian mining vessels to execute a pincer movement that trapped a technologically superior Caraxian fleet. The Velnar Trade Minister Thrazix was there when you were stripped of your command, Rice said softly. He personally spat at your feet during the treaty ceremony. He now controls the technology division that's been exploiting Earth's patents. Chen's expression hardened as he watched the recording of his greatest victory, followed by his greatest humiliation. When do we start? He asked. State your business, human, the Velnar security officer demanded, facial tentacles twitching with barely disguised contempt. Economic consultation, Chen replied, forcing his voice into a subservient tone that made his jaw clench. His DES implant, disguised as a standard translator behind his ear, recorded every interaction for later analysis. The Ganymede Economic Forum gleamed with ostentatious wealth, a stark contrast to the struggling Earth economy 5 years after the Treaty of Alturas. Alien species from across the conclave moved through the grand halls with the confidence of galactic rulers, while the few humans present kept their eyes down, grateful for whatever opportunities they could find in this new order. Chen's security scan took 3 times longer than those of other species, standard procedure for former military personnel under the treaty's monitoring provisions. You may proceed, the officer finally said, though I don't know why anyone would consult a human on economic matters. Chen bowed slightly and proceeded through the grand atrium toward the private elevators that would take him to Trade Minister Thrazix's suite. Around him, his implant captured critical data, currency exchange rates flashing on massive displays, shipping schedules, commodity prices, Information that appeared mundane to casual observers, but revealed vital strategic intelligence to those who knew how to interpret it. Admiral Chen. Thrasix's voice dripped with mockery as Chen entered the luxury skybox overlooking the trading floor. Or is it simply citizen now? I forget your reduced status. The Velner's facial tentacles rippled in what passed for their species' version of a smirk. Chen recognized him immediately. The same official who had advocated for completely disarming Earth rather than just restricting its forces. The same one who had spat at his feet during the treaty ceremony. Minister Thrasix. Chen bowed deeply, swallowing his pride. Thank you for granting this audience. Earth's remaining technology sector seeks favorable consideration for licensing agreements. The warrior species learns to beg for scraps. Thrasix poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter, but deliberately offered nothing to Chen. How entertaining. Over the next 6 hours, between calculated displays of submission and practiced desperation, Chen extracted critical intelligence. Thrasix, believing himself to be speaking to a broken adversary, revealed supply chain vulnerabilities in the Kuiper sector, mentioned internal political rivalries within the Velnar consortium, and complained about resource allocation inefficiencies. The Hrangian Empire is demanding higher tariffs for passage through their territories. Thrasix mentioned casually, examining financial projections on a hovering display, as if they could affect our operations. Chen noted the slight tension in Thrasix's voice. An opportunity. Perhaps Earth-registered transport vessels could offer alternative routing. He suggested meekly. At reduced rates, of course. Perhaps, Thrasix said dismissively. Have your people submit a proposal. Now, regarding your patent applications. Later, as Chen's shuttle departed Ganymede, he activated the secured quantum channel to Earth. Mission complete, he reported to Reyes. You were right about their vulnerabilities. And Thrasix? Arrogant, overconfident, revealed critical information about their supply chains and their tensions with the Hrangians. Reyes' face on the small screen showed the first genuine smile Chen had seen since her return from Altaris years ago. Excellent, she said. Dr. Patel's team is ready to begin modeling our approach. Report to the war room upon arrival. Operation Market Gambit is now active. Chen closed the channel and stared out at the stars. For the first time in 5 years, he felt the familiar rush of a combat operation beginning. Different battlefield, same objective. Victory. Execute, Chen ordered, and with that single word, 6 months of meticulous planning erupted into action. In the secured bunker beneath Geneva, unofficially dubbed the Alternative War Room by DE's staff, dozens of specialists hunched over terminals, their faces illuminated by the glow of real-time market data. The atmosphere crackled with the same tension Chen had felt aboard command ships before major engagements. First wave deployed, Dr. Patil announced, her fingers dancing across her interface. Stockpiles releasing in 3, 2, 1. On the central display, market indicators for rare minerals from the Kuiper sector suddenly shifted. 6 shell corporations simultaneously released carefully hoarded resources onto the market, flooding exchanges across 18 star systems. Prices that had been artificially maintained by Velnar monopolies for decades plummeted within minutes. Second wave, Chen commanded, checking the chronometer. Timing was everything in battle, economic or otherwise. A network of seemingly unrelated financial institutions, quietly acquired or influenced by Earth over the past 5 years, began calling in high-interest loans extended to Velnar subsidiary corporations. Demands for immediate payment cascaded through the system, forcing rapid liquidation of assets to cover the suddenly due debts. Teller team, execute patent litigation protocols. Rise directed from her station. On the Patent Authority stations circling Jupiter, a battalion of human lawyers simultaneously filed evidence of intellectual property theft against 17 Velnar technology subsidiaries. The automated systems immediately froze all related technology transfers across 5 sectors pending investigation. They're responding, a monitoring specialist called out. Velnar Trade Consortium is attempting to stabilize mineral prices with reserve capital. Chen smiled thinly. Exactly as predicted. Dr. Patel. Executing third wave, she confirmed. The final blow came as specialized trading algorithms, deployed through a web of minor trading houses across the galaxy, began shorting Velnar corporate stock while simultaneously spreading verified reports of the corporation's financial instability. Panicked investors across 12 species started dumping shares. On the emergency broadcast channel, they watched Trade Minister Thrazix's facial tentacles crashing wildly as he stared at collapsing holographic projections in the Velnar trading headquarters. Impossible, the alien shrieked, shattering a ceremonial finance orb against the wall. The footage cut abruptly as security forces moved in. Velnar Trade Consortium stock down 64% and falling, reported an analyst. They're attempting to halt trading, but our distributed network is bypassing their emergency protocols. The Conclave Security Council is convening an emergency session, Rise noted, reading incoming diplomatic alerts. As expected. Will they trace this back to us? Asked a junior analyst, the only person in the room who looked concerned rather than triumphant. Not officially, Rise assured him. Every action we've taken is technically legal under both Earth and Conclave commerce regulations. We've simply employed the same competitive market principles the Velnar themselves established. On a secondary screen, reports began streaming in of Earth-based companies, fronts for DES operations, moving to acquire key trade routes and resource access points as Velnar influence collapsed across multiple sectors. In traditional warfare, Chen observed, watching the real-time collapse of Velnar economic dominance, you measure victory in territory gained and enemy assets destroyed. How do we measure it here? His question was answered as classified intelligence appeared on his personal display. The Velnar military fleet was being sold off piece by piece to cover sovereign debt. They're dismantling their warships to pay their bills, Rise said with quiet satisfaction. That's how we know. Your analysis of our production inefficiencies is disturbingly accurate, the Moraxian official admitted, their bioluminescent skin pulsing with blues and purples that Chen had learned indicated deep concern. The Arcturus colonial governor's compound offered breathtaking views of the planet's famous Purple Mountain Range, but Chen's focus remained on the Moraxian delegation. 2 years ago, before the Velnar collapse, no alien species would have requested a human economic consultation. Now they competed for Earth's attention. Inefficiencies can be opportunities, Chen replied diplomatically. Earth's agricultural sector faced similar challenges during our pre-space era. The lead Moraxian leaned forward, glancing nervously at the compound's security systems. We've studied your species' economic theories, she whispered. The adaptation rate, the innovation cycles, they're unlike anything in Conclave economic doctrine. Those are just theories, Chen said with practiced modesty. Implementation requires careful consideration of local conditions. Which is why we want your advisors embedded throughout our governance structure. The Moraxian insisted. Our world's mineral exports are being undervalued by 26% according to your models. Chen nodded, concealing his satisfaction. This meeting was playing out exactly as Rise had predicted. The Moraxian homeworld controlled critical resources that would be essential for Phase 2 of Earth's long-term strategy. I believe we can come to an arrangement, he said. Our educational exchange program could accommodate your governance officers immediately, and our implementation specialists could begin infrastructure assessment within a standard month. The conversation continued for hours, covering infrastructure development, financial systems, and technology transfers, all perfectly legal under the Treaty of Altiris, which had focused exclusively on restricting human military presence while leaving economic cooperation untouched. As the meeting concluded, Chen's DES implant alerted him to an encrypted transmission from Earth. Excusing himself, he stepped onto a private balcony to receive the message. The Conclave just concluded an emergency session, Rise reported, her expression grim but satisfied. The Zalaxian representative attempted to propose emergency amendments to the Treaty of Alteris, specifically restricting human economic activities. How did the vote go? Chen asked, though he suspected the answer. Failed spectacularly, Rise confirmed. 17 species voted against it, including 4 founding members of the conclave. Too many worlds now depend on human trading relationships. The Zalaxians won't give up easily. No, they won't, Rise agreed. But they've lost their most powerful allies. The Jiraxians have officially requested human advisors for their banking system, and even the Silex have enrolled their economic ministers in Earth universities. Chen watched as the Moraxian delegation boarded their transport, already discussing implementation plans for human economic systems. Phase 2 has been approved by the Security Council, Rice continued. Operation Market Evolution begins at your command. The necessary resources and personnel are awaiting your deployment orders. Chen felt the familiar weight of command settle on his shoulders, a sensation he had thought lost forever after the treaty stripped him of his military rank. Understood, he replied. I'll establish the initial network here in the Arcturus sector before moving to the Moraxian homeworld. As the transmission ended, Chen turned back toward the governor's compound. The Moraxians didn't realize they were looking at the architect of their world's future transformation, a general deploying economic assets instead of warships, but a general nonetheless. Now, he murmured to himself, let's discuss how humans approach infrastructure development. The holographic notification interrupted Chen's rare attempt at sleep. Emergency Protocol Alpha. Immediate return required. Within hours, he stood in the crisis room at DS headquarters, watching footage of the Arcturus trading outpost, now nothing but atomized debris and cooling plasma. 3 Kranjan battle cruisers moved methodically through the wreckage, their weapon systems still glowing from recent discharge. Casualty report, Chen asked, his voice tight. 8,437 confirmed dead. A junior analyst responded. Mostly Moraxian civilians, but 212 human economic advisors were stationed there. The mood in the room was grim. Military officers watched from a separate section, their expressions a mixture of frustration and helplessness. Under the Treaty of Alteris, Earth's military forces could not deploy beyond the Sol system, regardless of the provocation. The Conclave's response. Rise asked, entering the room with her characteristic focused energy despite the hour. A formal condemnation, reported the diplomatic liaison. No enforcement actions proposed. As expected, Rise nodded. Aprangians were never signatories to the treaty. They're testing us, seeing if our economic influence has actual protective value. Chen studied the tactical displays showing the position of the Aprangian fleet. They're on a direct course for the Moraxian homeworld. Our most crucial new ally, Rise confirmed. If they fall, we lose our foothold in the entire sector. Within minutes, the DEA's headquarters transformed. Market analysts and economic theorists moved with the disciplined precision Chen recognized from military operations. A former currency manipulator demonstrated how the Prangian credit system could be undermined through synchronized trading algorithms. A behavioral economics specialist presented models showing how strategically timed insurance rate increases could redirect shipping away from Prangian space without violating free trade agreements. Not fast enough, Chen assessed. Their fleet will reach Moraxian space before economic pressure becomes effective. What do you propose? Rides asked. A coalition, Chen replied, already accessing diplomatic channels. I need immediate communication with 11 trade consortiums operating in the sector. Over the next 18 hours, Chen personally led negotiations with competing trade entities that had never before cooperated. By leveraging Earth's newfound economic influence and appealing to shared profit motives, he established unified shipping protocols that effectively isolated Ranjan space without firing a shot. As the Ranjan fleet approached the Moraxian homeworld, Supreme Commander Vorkath dispatched their most advanced destroyer to break through what human media outlets carefully called the trade realignment. The massive warship emerged from jump space directly above the Moraxian capital, only to find itself surrounded by defense systems that hadn't existed 2 weeks earlier. In the tense standoff that followed, Chen authorized the revelation of Earth's final strategic card. Human innovation had quietly transformed Allied worlds' defensive capabilities under the guise of civilian infrastructure upgrades, all perfectly legal under the treaty's technical specifications. The Hrangian vessel held position for 23 tense minutes before slowly reversing course. As it retreated, a direct communication from Vorkath himself reached Chen's terminal. "You were forbidden from bringing weapons to this sector," the Hrangian commander accused, his scaled face filling the screen. Chen allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before responding. "We didn't bring weapons, Commander. We simply showed our friends how to build better tools." The communication terminated, and Chen turned to find Reyes watching him with quiet approval. "They won't try again," he stated with certainty. "No," she agreed. "They've just learned what the Velner discovered too late, that humans without warships are still the most dangerous species in the galaxy." The conclave chambers hadn't changed in 20 years, the same towering architecture designed to intimidate, the same hierarchical seating that placed Earth's representatives near the bottom. What had changed was how the alien delegates looked at the human observers. Chen, silver-haired now but still sharp-eyed, watched from the diplomatic gallery as the emergency session descended into chaos. Beside him sat Captain Maya Wang, his protege, and the designated successor to lead DES operations in the Arcturus sector. "I still don't understand why they're only realizing now what we've been doing for 2 decades, Wang whispered as the Velma representative delivered an impassioned speech, demanding sanctions against Earth for covert imperial expansion. Chen pointed to the Moraxian representative, who was passionately defending Earth's economic partnerships. Because until today, every species thought they were the only ones becoming dependent on human systems. On the chamber floor, the Juraxian delegation presented their analysis with devastating precision. The holographic displays told the story that had unfolded since the Treaty of Altaris. Human economic methodologies now dominated trade across 12 sectors. Earth's currency served as the standard for interstellar commerce, and the newly established Turan Trade Academy had a 2-year waiting list for alien applicants. Earth controls no territories. The Juraxian analyst concluded, maintains no military bases beyond Sol, and has violated no provision of any treaty. Yet human influence now exceeds what even the most ambitious military conquest could have achieved. The chamber fell silent as the implications settled over the assembled delegates. "Look at the Silex counselor," Chen murmured to Wang. "That's the same individual who demanded Ambassador Reyes sign the original treaty in blood." The ancient Silex appeared deeply troubled, the crystalline structures of its face reflecting light in patterns that indicated distress in their species. "The humans have created something unprecedented." The Silex counselor finally spoke, its voice resonating through the chamber. "Not an empire of occupation, but an empire of necessity." The Velna representative rose again, desperate now. "We must act before it's too late. The humans have circumvented the spirit of the treaty while adhering to its letter. They've turned our own systems against us." "And what systems are those?" asked the Moraxian delegate. "Free trade, open markets, innovation. My world's productivity has increased by 46% under human economic advisement. Our citizens enjoy unprecedented prosperity." Similar testimonials came from representatives of 7 other species, each describing benefits from human economic partnerships. The Silex counselor called for a vote on the Velmar sanctions proposal. The result was unprecedented. Unanimous rejection. In the stunned silence that followed, the Zalaxian representative activated their communication crystal. "Contact your homeworld," they announced grimly. "The Treaty of Altaris must be renegotiated immediately." As the chamber erupted in chaotic debate, Chen's secure implant vibrated with an incoming message. The text was brief but momentous. "Director Reyes has been watching from her medical facility. Her condition has stabilized enough to travel. The Security Council requests your immediate return to Earth. Preparations for the new treaty negotiations are underway. Chen turned to Wang, his expression solemn. It's time. You'll take command of Arcturus operations while I return to Earth. Is it victory? Wang asked quietly. Chen watched the panicked faces of the conclave delegates as they realized the full extent of what humanity had accomplished. A different kind than we once imagined, he replied. But victory nonetheless. The medical exoskeleton whirred softly as Ambassador Elena Reyes, now in her 80s, ascended the steps of the conclave chamber. The same steps she had descended in defeat 2 decades earlier. Chen walked beside her, restored to his full admiral's uniform just yesterday in a ceremony that had been broadcast across human territories. Reyes had refused more advanced medical interventions. Let them see what time does, she had insisted. Let them remember who I was when I signed their treaty, and who I am now that I've defeated it. The chamber fell silent as they entered, a different kind of silence than the contemptuous hush that had greeted humanity after the Proxima incursion. This silence carried respect, wariness, and no small amount of fear. The Silex counselor, now ancient even by their species standards, presented the terms of the proposed Galactic Concordat, designed to replace the Treaty of Alteris. The document formally recognized humanity's unique role in galactic governance and removed all restrictions on human military deployment. When offered the ceremonial pen, Reyes declined, her voice stronger than her frail body suggested. I signed the last treaty in blood. This one deserves more consideration. With a subtle gesture, she activated the chamber's central holographic display. Real-time feeds from across the galaxy appeared. Human-designed agricultural systems ending famines on Juraxian colonies, Terran medical technologies halting a pandemic on the Zalaxian homeworld, human educational methodologies being implemented in Silex developmental centers. You banned our warriors, Reyes addressed the silent chamber, forcing us to unleash something far more powerful, our economic tacticians. She moved forward, her exoskeleton compensating for the tremors in her legs. You feared our conquests, but we never needed to conquer worlds when we could make ourselves essential to them instead. You saw only the threat of our weapons, missing entirely the power of our ideas. She finally accepted the pen and signed the new treaty, her signature firm despite her age. As the formalities concluded, an unexpected figure approached. The current Velnar representative, offspring of Thrazix, the trade minister whose arrogance had helped spark Earth's economic revolution. My father died in disgrace, the young Velnar said, facial tentacles moving in patterns of regret. But before the end, he recognized the elegance of what your species accomplished. He told me to learn from humans, not fear them. The Velnar offered a small crystalline object, a traditional symbol of reconciliation among their species. As the conclave session concluded, the Silex counselor made a final statement for the historical record. Let it be known throughout the galaxy that the most dangerous weapon in the universe is not a human holding a gun. It's a human with a spreadsheet and an idea. Outside the chamber, Chen and Reyes paused at a viewport overlooking the vast space station and the stars beyond. Was it worth it? Chen asked. All these years of working from the shadows. Reyes smiled, watching alien diplomats hurrying to establish new relationships with human representatives. We could have fought their warships and perhaps won some battles, she said. Instead, we transformed the galaxy without firing a shot. She turned to face the stars, where human ships would soon journey without restriction. That, Admiral Chen, is the greatest victory of all.